you. So many of you have asked about the small business loans, what's available through the stimulus package. Does it apply to the faith-based community? We have the woman here with answers. Karen Jenkins and her consulting firm have provided dynamic solutions for companies and employees, building their confidence, also increasing their proven results. She is here with this morning because she has spent the time to break this all down. Karen, first of all, I check in with you. How you doing, girlfriend?
Good morning, Judy. Good morning, ladies.
So, Karen, let's start off. We have the PPP and we have what is it, EIDL. You can break down the acronyms, but tell us about the programs that are available. Let's start there.
So the two main programs, Judy, that are available is the Payroll Protection Program, which launched last Friday, April 3rd, primarily for small business owners and business owners to protect the jobs, basically, that people were losing, and to give employers an opportunity to maintain those employees so that they wouldn't feel or have this excessive burden. The launch had some challenges, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And that one is primarily to protect the payroll. So it's a forgivable loan as long as you meet the requirements, which is 75% of the funds have to go towards payroll, and the other 25% can go towards your mortgage, your rent, and some utilities. There are repayment options. There's no payment if you do have to end up paying it back. There's no payment due for 6 months in those cases. And then there's scenarios where the interest is not going to be accrued until that time as well. The EIDL loan is actually through the SBA. So let me back up. So the PPP loan is taken through the lenders. Most of the banks, if they're SBA 7A approved lender, can take your application. The challenges that we saw last week is that a lot of banks have made the decision that they're only going to accept applications from those customers that already have a relationship with them. And some of them even went so far as to say a banking relationship that has a business loan attached to it. So there's some challenges there. We can talk through how you can work around that. But the EIDL loan is one that is also kind of for payroll, but you can use it for other things as well. On top of that EIDL loan is a $10,000 forgivable grant, and that's the dollars that they're trying to get into your hands quickly. The processing time for the EIDL loan is supposed to be, and I quote, supposed to be about 3 weeks. So they're trying to, if you apply, they're trying to get the $10,000 forgivable grant in your hands a lot quicker. How is it forgivable? Basically using the same guidelines that we had for the PPP loan, as long as you used it for payroll, rent, and possibly utilities. So if you get approved for the EIDL loan, you will have to repay that back. But the terms are great. 3.75 if you're a business, 2.75 if you're a nonprofit, amortized up to 30 years, which you don't see on business loans. And you'll have up to a year to start making payments on that program.
Karen, thanks so much for joining us and for answering some of these questions. Can you talk about this application process and some of the troubles that we've dealt with? We've heard of long waits on the phone and people just not being able to get through. Can you talk about some of the problems and how we can find a resolution for some of these?
Well, I think the first resolution is to be realistic about our expectations. So this is unprecedented. For the government to come out and pass a legislation in 1 week and then in a separate week come back and say, okay, the things that we said you could do will be in place. If anybody's familiar with legislation is about this tall and probably taller than that in this case. So their legislation was passed. It was passed to the SBA. SBA had to decipher it and digest it and figure out what they needed to communicate to the banks. The banks had to take it and digest it and to figure out what they needed to do within their systems. And knowing that there was an avalanche of small business owners that were needing this assistance, it was not going to be pretty. So for the fact that they were able to roll it out that fast, I think we all should just step back and say, okay, in a real world, how long would it have taken? Now we're in a crisis world with people working teleworking, and they were still able to pull something off. So the challenge was that the information had to be sent out, deciphered, and then it had to be implemented. And a lot of the banks, when you look at your smaller banks, bigger banks may have not had that much of an issue because they have more people to tackle it, but they had to put a system in place. I got my application, I think maybe Wednesday, filled it out Thursday. By Friday morning, the application had changed. Friday filled out the application. I heard that it changed again over the weekend. But it was just they're trying their best to decipher the information and put it out there. And they're just as frustrated. The bankers are frustrated. SBA is frustrated. And of course, we're frustrated because we, as small business owners, we're looking for the assistance that they said that we could have. But realistically, we won't have it fast. This is it's going to take some time, and they're doing their best to try to get the dollars out to us. But we just have to take our time and know that it's coming. The EIDL loan is going to take longer to process. They did set expectations that would be about 3 weeks, which is why they were trying to give the $10,000 forgivable grant up front so that it would tide you over until then. Waiting to see how many people can get their hands on those dollars. But it really is for us to sit back and take our time and know that it's coming. But don't get frustrated at SBA office because they can't answer your questions. The banks are doing what they can. They're trying to communicate. And as we find out information on where you can get updates, for example, the banks can give you updates on what they know on the PPP loan, and we'll try to find some information on how you can go about getting an update on your EIDL loan.
Karen, thank you again for being with us today. I know that there are a lot of faith-based organizations here in the Midlands, and I'm sure that they want to know, what loans are they eligible for, and are there any restrictions on those organizations and the loan money they receive?
The private nonprofits are eligible. As far as I know, when you talk about payroll, as long as they're using it for those same reasons, to pay people, to take care of rent or mortgage, and to use utilities, they would have the same obligation that everybody else would. And the same applies. Now, I haven't read into detail, so I don't want to put a blanket statement out there, but the information should be on the SBA website for that specific nonprofit. One other note for sole proprietors and independent contractors, they were not allowed to put in their PPP application last Friday, but it is opening up for them this Friday. So if you're a sole proprietor or independent contractor, the application process will open up for you this coming Friday.
Karen, I also, we're talking a lot about this process, and people are going to have to work the process. I know, for a lot of people, their patience is being tested, no doubt. But, you and I have known each other for a long time, and when your father fell ill, this was back in 2015, you lost 70% of your company's revenue. For many people, looking at that reality right now, they feel like that's, a death sentence, and that their dream, of this small business that they have cultivated and built over the years is just about to go away. But you were able to recover. Share a little bit about that and the perseverance, that same kind of perseverance that these small businesses need to have right now.
Again, Judy, it's really about your faith and your belief. If you think you can, you're right. If you think you can't, you're right. I take a can-do attitude, going full in, playing all out, but not being tied to the outcome. I've always played that way. I'll go back to when I first got laid off in 2007. We opened up a mortgage company in 2007. In 2008, the economy crashed. So I've opened up a business and lost it. I had to pivot. I pivoted to KRJ Consulting. We started out as a mortgage foreclosure counseling entity to support family services in Charleston. We transitioned to market. We transitioned to consulting, training, and development, which is kind of where we are, got into the government contracting sector. So it's all about the pivot, what's going on in your life, and then what's going on in the economy. And then in 2015, when my father got sick, we lost 70% of our income, of our revenue, and had no idea where it was coming from. But guess what? We had a plan A, we had a plan B, we had a plan C. If in this case, the community is different because everybody's kind of in the boat that I was in, but it's also better because not only, I didn't have a stimulus package. I didn't have a program protection in place. I didn't have a EIDL program. I just had my faith and my tenacity, knowing that I needed to pivot and that whatever it took for me to get from this point to the next point, I needed to be prepared. So even in this crisis right now, I don't know where we're going, what we're going to look like exactly. I know we'll come out of it, but I'm prepared for anything. I'm going in this full on, being patient, waiting to see what we can get support in, but at the same time, being prepared to pivot, going this way, that way, or the other way, depending on the scenarios that produce themselves. And as long as you can be limber and flexible in that way, you'll survive. Entrepreneurs are resilient, which is why you're an entrepreneur in the first place. This is scary out here. If you don't hunt and fish and catch something, then you don't eat. Or if you had a crisis like I do, there's a possibility you don't eat. But there's so many programs coming. There are things that are happening. And I also heard, ladies, that Congress is going back to the table already because they recognize that the dollars that they have allocated to small businesses is not enough. Hadn't been passed yet, but the fact that they recognize that and they're getting ready to send us this life vest, then we need to be prepared for what happens after this and start thinking through option A, B, and C, and what does that look like?
Karen, going back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, we do have a question on Facebook. Tanya wants to know, the question reads, Karen, what about folks that file returns with their EINs? Are they qualified to apply for assistance for either program? So if they file with their employee identification numbers, can they get assistance?
So I think the question was, an EIN number is a tax identification number, typically one that is assigned to a business and or a nonprofit. A Social Security number kind of does that for a sole proprietor. And if that's the question, then yes, sole proprietors are opening up, I think it's tomorrow actually, independent contracts and sole proprietors, which most of them do use their Social Security numbers, will qualify. So you can submit your applications.
Karen, thank you so much. We are getting so many questions on our Facebook page, and I'm sure people would want to know, where's the best place to get kind of all these resources in one fell swoop?
So the Richland County Library has a meeting with all of the resource providers every Monday at 2, and they do a phenomenal job, and they're consolidating all the information that they receive on their website. So go to Richland County Library's website. The SBA, if you're looking for specific information on the loans and the loans programs, go to sba.gov. And of course, if you're looking for anything on COVID, you want to go to the CDC website. So those are the three that I reference all the time. And that's probably the best option that I can offer.
Karen, one more question. I know a lot of people, whether you own a small business or not, people are dealing with debt and have bills coming in that they can't pay. I know you wanted to emphasize that many lenders, not all, but many are deferring payments for up to 90 days, but that will not happen automatically. Give us the strategies that we need to follow for everything from mortgage to credit card companies and vendors.
So when you go and you need to ask, you need to find out what's offered based on the vendors or lenders that you're dealing with. But before you go and ask, do an assessment of where you are right now. So I would take a snapshot of, okay, this was my life before this is my life now. How much revenue do you have? What savings do you have stashed away or you have access to? Then make a list of all of your expenses. You want to prioritize those expenses, and we talked about it last week, where you want to prioritize the most important: the mortgage, the food, the electric, the medical. But then after that, you start looking at who can I call to postpone or pause. And then you want to go in and start making these phone calls. Be prepared to wait because everybody else is calling too. And I shared with people last week, get on the phone. I will get on the phone, sit at my desk, and I'm doing something else while I'm waiting for them to pick up the phone, listening to the elevator music, which drives me crazy sometimes, but that's okay. but we want to go in and be prepared for that. Then because you know your finances better than anybody else. So please don't pick up the phone and not have done the assessment part. You want to be able to tell them honestly, here's where I am, this is what I'm doing, and then ask what programs they have available. Lenders, at least the ones that I've spoken to, are, if you call, have programs set up that they will delay your payment and interest for up to 90 days. Mortgage companies may do a forbearance where they will delay your payment, but then tack it on the back of the loan. If you qualify, but you have to pick up the phone, you have to call, you have to make the ask.